America's Voice Live, America's fastest growing news program. With Steve Gruber.
We've got to put America first. You do that by voting and bringing your friends to do the same.
Delivering the latest news, observations, and opinions. With the entire Real America's Voice team, America's Voice Live starts now.
Welcome to America's Voice Live. I'm Steve Gruber. Today, Thursday, September 7th. Let's get to the day's top stories, and thank you, as always, for being here. An impeachment trial is underway, and no, not for Joe Biden. This one is for the Attorney General of the state of Texas, Ken Paxton. You probably heard about that. Many believe it's nothing more than a political payback. Dave Covey will be here from Texas to give us the latest update. I'm very own Ben Berquam back from El Salvador with a report on how things there are affecting our border and, more importantly, our safety. He'll join me with all the details that you won't hear on other networks, and then later. President Joe Biden's administration has finalized plans for a program to reduce air pollution from heavy-duty trucks across the U.S., but it will crush the supply chain and put America's food supply at risk, so say trucking firms and a whole lot of other folks. Will talk about that. We start here today. Could there actually be justice in the future for Hunter Biden, maybe even the senile old man squatting in the Oval Office? It's an important question today because it seems possible, much to my surprise and millions of others, I think, too. We learned late yesterday that Hunter Biden is going to be indicted before the end of September for a felony gun charge because he lied. He lied on a federal background check before buying a handgun. It's all part of several things that have happened recently. First, a positively sweetheart deal put together with federal prosecutors was rejected by the federal judge in the case back in July. And after first walking into court thinking all of his sins would be forgiven for tax evasion and that felony gun charge, it was all going to be wrapped up in a near total immunity deal, Hunter left court that day with nothing at all. And since then, the federal prosecutor in the case, David Weiss, who was appointed as a special counsel, and most of us, me included, thought that was the end of it. Weiss, the federal prosecutor from Delaware, would just hide behind the ongoing investigation curtain and nothing would ever happen to the chronic drug and alcohol abuser who's also accused of not paying millions of dollars in taxes or registering as a foreign agent, and even accusations of sex with underage girls and human trafficking for that same purpose, for sex. But apparently I was wrong, and so are you maybe, because Weiss told U.S. District Judge Marion Noriega that he expects Hunter to be indicted at least on the gun charge later this month. So where else is this leading? Listen.
And there is the question about whether this investigation would broaden further or whether there are other potential crimes that are now back on the table. You know, they brought up the potential, foreign agent dealing. So, look, Hunter Biden now has a host of problems that he didn't have or didn't think he had a couple of weeks ago.
Oh, he's got a host of problems, but it was certainly something most of us were not anticipating. In fact, most of the talking heads on the numerous left-leaning cable news networks spent a whole lot of time rationalizing the entire matter and dismissing the seriousness of violating gun laws in America or not paying millions in taxes. Here's more.
The special counsel David Weiss intends to seek an indictment against Hunter Biden relating to gun charges by the end of the month, that according to a new court filing. Biden had previously reached a deal involving a gun possession charge that would have allowed him to avoid prosecution if he met certain conditions over a 24-month period. Once his plea deal, though, fell apart in court, the future of the gun deal has been in limbo.
Well, there's Wolf Blitzer. So just a few weeks ago, the White House, including President Joe Biden and the entire administration, thought they had cleaned up this whole Hunter Biden mess. But today, it's not only not cleaned up, it's possibly expanding and exposing the president to even more scrutiny at a time when his poll numbers are already in the toilet and the calls for him to step aside because of other issues like age and his general lack of competence were already growing louder. There's no doubt that this latest public relations dumpster fire will inflict even more political damage on the most unpopular president of modern times. So now we have to wonder, is David Weiss going to use his newly minted powers of special counsel to defy Attorney General Merrick Garland's unwritten wishes to keep the Hunter Biden story out of the headlines and do what an honest prosecutor do and actually follow the facts, even if it leads to 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue? I guess we'll have to wait and see. But James Comer, has been investigating the Biden crime family and reacted this way over the news that Hunter will finally be indicted for a felony.
Well, it's obvious Hunter Biden's committed about a dozen crimes. That was in the correspondence we sent to the judge, and she started rattling off the first two. The most obvious are the violation of the Foreign Agents Registration Act and simple tax evasion. And the two IRS whistleblowers in their committee hearing testified to the numerous counts of tax evasion. So I'm not surprised that he should be indicted. Now, I'm proceeding with caution with David Weiss, but I'll say this. This is an opportunity for David Weiss to clear his good name. This is an opportunity for him to do the right thing. I mean, it's obvious. I've said from day one that investigating the Bidens is like tracking a bleeding bear through a snowstorm. There's evidence everywhere. So this is the obvious thing that a special counsel should do, and let's see how it plays out.
Tracking a wounded bear through a snowstorm, there's evidence everywhere, but there has been for a long time. Much of this case, the original Hunter Biden case at all, can date all the way back to 2008. Whistleblowers from Goldman Sachs were putting together PowerPoint demonstrations about the problems with Hunter Biden in 2015, and it just kept going on. Well, with the American people already disenchanted over the economy and the literal invasion at the southern border, there is no doubt that more questions about the Biden family getting tens of millions of dollars from various foreign countries, including China, Russia, Ukraine, and Romania, will lead to even more damaging headlines and even lower poll numbers, if that's possible, but they're on the way. And while the Republican investigation has been slow going, new emails will demonstrate Joe Biden was very involved with Hunter Biden's business deals. So says James Comer. Here he is again.
The archives is saying that because it happened during the Obama administration, that Barack Obama will have 30 days to review all 5,400 of these emails in the pseudonyms. And then he will decide whether or not he's going to turn it over to the House Oversight Committee. So your guess is as good as mine. But at the end of the day, we believe that many of these that were using the pseudonyms also had redactions that pertain to things about Hunter Biden, even redacting the fact that he was copied on these. So what Joe Biden's always said and the mainstream media has always gone along with is that, well, there was why are you investigating Hunter Biden? He wasn't a part of the government, and Joe Biden had a firewall between the government and his son. That's not true. We've proven that in the last 2 weeks. There are emails that went back and forth where Hunter's legal team was telling Joe Biden how to spin the narrative about the corruption he got caught in. There was copies where he was copied about Ukraine foreign policy. And we believe there are many more emails that the National Archives is sitting on.
Well, they are protecting Joe Biden at every turn inside the swamp. They want to protect him, but at least Joe is jovial. He's jovial. He's in a good mood, of course. Probably had 2 scoops of ice cream yesterday before he made this appearance. He's jovial, ignoring his own rules for the coming and pending COVID pandemic part 3. Listen and watch this.
As I've said in the last 2 years, please wear a mask. If you're in I think it's part of your patriotic duties.
I've been tested again today. I'm clear across the board. But they keep telling me because this has to be 10 days or something, I got to keep wearing it. But don't tell them I didn't have it on when I walked in.
It's the rules. His wife tested positive for COVID-19, even though she has been jabbed at least 4 times. We know of 2 vax, 2 boosters, no good. Yeah, he just has to keep wearing it for 10 days or something. Doesn't sound like he's all too serious about it now, does he? But closer to the election, I'll bet it'll get real serious. COVID. And why not? It's not like these people follow the rules anyway. However, this further raises the question about, will Joe Biden stay in the race for president? Like I said, many Democrats are already over the antics and, frankly, the arrogance of the old man. He's ruthless. He's cocky. He thinks he's smarter than everybody. They don't like it all that much. And the questions from the press, the same press that slept through the 2020 election, are actually starting to hit home. And these questions will only get louder and more frequent and more pointed, especially after an indictment against Hunter Biden is handed down in the aftermath of that plea deal that was destroyed. I mean, the Republicans have already asked for all the documents that led to the disqualified plea deal that would have let the first son skate without so much as one day in jail. Who was involved with that? Who was involved? Who put that deal together? What are the details? Who talked? What are the emails? Lots of us would like to know that. And those are the big questions that even the lapdog media cannot ignore anymore. But trust me, the White House will continue to ignore them as long as possible, if not forever. And when asked, they just won't answer, acting like they're doing the right thing and remaining impartial by not talking about it. Watch this.
The letter cites email traffic between Kate Bedingfield and Eric Schwerwin, who's a longtime Hunter Biden business associate, in which Bedingfield signed off on quotes that should be used to respond to media inquiries about Hunter's involvement in Burisma. How do you respond to criticism that shows there was no wall between then Vice President Biden's work and his family's business dealings?
I understand the question. I appreciate the question. I get the question. I'm just going to let the White House counsel team answer that question.
I really appreciate the question. Obviously, you just love that question. Yeah, I really appreciate the question. Yeah, it's clear. And this is the last place Democrats want to find themselves as they sit down for Thanksgiving dinner, open presents on Christmas, or celebrate the new year. Republicans, on the other hand, would be very thankful, feel like they'd gotten a huge gift, and ring in the new year with glee. And the reason is obvious. But before you celebrate, just remember, if Joe Biden is run out too soon, well, you get Kamala Harris as president. How dangerous? Come on, this woman is just vapid. Here's a comment from yesterday from your vice president.
I feel very strongly about the importance as a general matter of engaging in U.S. policy as it relates to foreign affairs in a way that we pay attention, of course, to the immediate concerns and threats if they exist, but that we also pay attention to 10, 20, 30 years down the line and what we are developing now that will be to the benefit of our country.
Yeah, the benefit of our country. What is she talking about? No, nobody knows. She doesn't even know. She just likes to talk and circle around and talk like the kid who was just too busy to get their homework done. Oh, yeah, I'm on top of this. Now, is there anybody in politics that's been able to talk so much without saying anything at all before her? Probably, but not anybody comes to mind. But back to Joe Biden. Let's remember this polling now, especially after the election, because if old Joe can win with polling like this, I don't know what that means for our system of government. Look.
30% of Americans in this poll say things are going well today, Sarah. 7 in 10 Americans say they're going badly.
I am going to make the assumption that the economic concerns are one of the really big issues for Americans. Inflation, not having their jobs, give them enough money to sort of keep up.
Will economics win the day, as it always has? Probably. Or could we see a repeat of the 2022 midterms, where apparently a lot of Americans just didn't care if they were hurting? Now, that was not a presidential election, though. They voted for the woke nonsense instead, in part. Republicans got the House, but not by the margin needed. They didn't win the Senate as hoped. But what's going to happen? Well, we'll keep an eye on it. But Joe Biden's problems are only getting worse, and it'll get worse when Hunter gets indicted. Trust me on that. Coming up after the break, Michigan authorities have found a dangerous suspect who set fire to several Michigan State Police cruisers and then shot them up on Wednesday. We've got an update coming up on America's Voice Live. Well, this is one of the crazier stories you'll hear this week. Authorities in Michigan's Upper Peninsula in Sault Ste. Marie, that's right on the Canadian border. There's Sault Ste. Marie, Michigan, and Sault Ste. Marie, Ontario. Well, they found a suspect, a male suspect, eventually found and surrounded in a home about 7 miles outside of the city limits. That happened late last night, and around 2 o'clock today, he was taken into custody following an exchange of gunfire with state police on the scene. Now, this all began when the Michigan State Police in Sault Ste. Marie reported that around 3:30 Wednesday morning, multiple cruisers, state police cars, were set on fire. It's really remarkable. They were set on fire, and then the suspect was seen wearing full camouflage and driving a silver Honda CR-V began shooting his rifle into the cars. At 9 o'clock this morning, all local schools were on lockdown. Classes continued with police presence at all the schools. And they got everybody out of there. Now, the suspect apparently taken away in an ambulance. The condition of that suspect not known. But who sets police cars on fire and does it at a state police post where you know you're going to be on camera? That one's a little bit different now, isn't it? We'll keep you updated on it as we know. Hunter Biden facing a new federal grand jury indictment expected no later than September 29th related to those gun charges we talked about. Special counsel David Weiss filed a document in the U.S. District Court of Delaware in response to an oral order from the DOJ that his office provide a status update on the case. He stated that the Speedy Trial Act requires that the government obtain the return of an indictment by a grand jury before the end of the month. Hunter's lawyers submitted their own status update stating that the first son was following the conditions of the diversion agreement that fell apart in court in July. Now, under that agreement, which is no longer in effect, Hunter was to remain sober, submit to drug testing, avoid committing crimes for 2 years, and never own a firearm again. Yeah, things are going sideways for poor Hunter. I mean, you feel sorry for him, don't you? President Biden turned heads Tuesday did you see this? I mean, if you didn't, it's really kind of bizarre. He turned heads Tuesday when he abruptly left an awards ceremony for a Vietnam veteran who was receiving the Medal of Honor. As one of the most decorated helicopter pilots in U.S. Army history, watch this. I've never seen anything like it. Oh, yeah, here's your medal. See you later. Good luck. Really? No, he's not senile at all. Just you. The ceremony continued on for several moments afterwards, all of which Biden missed, including the concluding prayer. Was he confused? Not according to White House Press Secretary Karine Jean-Pierre. No, he had it completely under control. Listen.
He wanted to make sure he had those really important remarks to share about the heroics and what the Captain Taylor did on behalf of his country. So yes, he took off his mask. But what we made sure to happen is that there was a brief pause. When there was a pause in the program, the president left. So to minimize his impact or his impact towards the attendees who were there. And so that was done on purpose. That was done very purposefully.
Wait a second. Did he put his mask on before he exited? No, he shook the guy's hand with his filthy hands that he usually coughs into. Then he walked out of the room with no mask on to protect everybody. Got it. Apparently the White House's new playbook is just to claim that whatever move he makes is all planned. No matter how disrespectful, implausible, completely unbelievable, like walking out on Captain Taylor. Senate Minority Leader Mitch McConnell says he has no plans to step down or retire amid health concerns. McConnell froze up not once, but twice in recent months. Last week he did it while talking to reporters in Kentucky. During a weekly presser on Wednesday, McConnell told reporters, quote, "I'm going to finish my term as a leader, and I'm going to finish my Senate term." He repeatedly directed reporters to a letter from the attending congressional position, Dr. Brian Monahan, who wrote that there was no evidence that McConnell has a movement disorder or had any kind of stroke or mini stroke. According to Senator Rand Paul, Monahan has described the freezing episodes as symptoms of dehydration, but Paul, a doctor, says that that's not valid. He is concerned it's something far more serious. He said that's just not valid. All right. There's an organization that still backs Obamacare, gun control, and extreme transgender policies that endanger our kids. It's not the Democrats. This organization claims to be bipartisan, but last year, 95% of their money went to one party, the Democrats. The organization? AARP. Let that sink in. AARP does not represent the values of the vast majority of American seniors. Fortunately, there is a conservative alternative, the Association of Mature American Citizens, AMAC. Proudly champions Americans' right to free speech, religious liberty, and, of course, the Second Amendment. AMAC defends parents' rights to protect their children and is fighting to restore America's election integrity. With more than 2 million members nationwide, AMAC is pro-faith, pro-family, and pro-freedom. I'm proud to be an AMAC member, and I encourage you to do the same and join today. Let's send AARP a strong message that they don't represent conservative seniors. Join AMAC today at amac.us/voice. That's amac.us/VOICE. Do the right thing. Coming up after the break, Biden's EPA is getting ready to potentially ruin America's food supply. How does that happen? Still coming up today on ABL. Well, Vice President Kamala Harris visited Jakarta this week, focusing on the importance of long-term foreign policy planning in Southeast Asia and its economic significance as a counterbalance to China in the White House's international efforts. She attended the annual Association of Southeast Asian Nations Summit, where she was interviewed by Associated Press reporter Chris Majerian about her readiness to assume the presidency if Joe Biden were unable to complete his term. Here's what she had to say.
questions about how you would step in the role, if necessary. Do you feel prepared for that possibility? And serving as vice president prepared you for that job?
Yes.
And how would you describe that process?
Well, first of all, I'm answering your hypothetical. But Joe Biden's going to be fine. Right. So that is not going to come to fruition. But let us also understand that every vice president understands that when they take the oath, that they must be very clear about the responsibility they may have to take over the job of being president. I am no different.
No, you're different. Yeah. Harris departed from protocol by discussing the hypothetical scenario of Biden's potential death, a topic typically considered taboo in Washington. Although out of 45 U.S. presidents, 8 have died in office, 4 of natural causes, 4 from assassination. Can you name them? Even if Harris were to find herself in a run for president in 2024, her poll numbers, wow, they make Joe Biden look popular. A Real Clear Politics poll indicates that only 40% of Americans approve of her political role, with Biden slightly ahead at 41.7%. This shows she'll face stiff competition if she were to run against President Trump. It's worth noting Harris did not receive a single vote, not one, in the 2020 Democratic primary. Not one. Really? True. President Joe Biden's chief of staff, Jeff Zients, has ordered all federal employees to return to their offices this fall after an extended period of remote work post-pandemic. Reports highlighted 75% of office space in 17 different federal agencies remains vacant at a cost to you of approximately $2 billion for office maintenance and over $5 billion in leases that isn't being used. Some federal employees were working from unconventional locations like bathtubs, golf courses, or happy hour, while the backlog of important tasks continued to grow. Republican Iowa Senator Joni Ernst has called for a clearance sale of unused office space to alleviate the mounting national debt, citing potential savings of $30 million a year by reducing office space at the U.S. Patent and Trademark Office headquarters alone. The Biden administration's refusal to provide an accurate count of teleworking staff has prompted Republican demands for transparency with threats of compulsory measures if information is not disclosed. Republicans are also demanding a return to work for all federal employees just in time for COVID 3.0. Oh boy, it's going to be exciting when they pull that one out of the hat. Leader of the Proud Boys, Enrique Tarrio, as you probably heard, has been sentenced to 22 years in federal prison yesterday on seditious conspiracy charges for his participation in the J6 riots in unrest. Even though he was not even there, he was arrested 2 days earlier. While disembarking his plane in D.C., he never made it to the protest. Meanwhile, Black Lives Matter protester Montez Lee was sentenced to just 10 years in prison for setting fire to a pawn shop and killing Oscar Stewart in May of 2020. Murder. Lee went into the pawn shop, poured an accelerant, and torched the building. He was caught on film outside the pawn shop with his fist in the air. The prosecution sought lesser charges because of a Martin Luther King interview from 1966 stating, "We've got to see that a rioting is the language of the unheard." Gateway Pundit reported this morning Tarrio disclosed federal authorities tried to coerce him into providing false testimony incriminating Donald Trump. Tarrio said, and I quote, "They asked me to lie about President Trump in order to indict him. I told them to pound sand, and because I refused to lie about President Trump, it cost me 22 years of my life." Tarrio was recorded saying that. Ontario included Department of Justice prosecutors pressuring him to sign a fabricated statement alleging communication with Trump regarding January 6th plans, a connection he said never happened. The stark contrast between Lee's sentence and the nonviolent January 6th defendants is further eroding trust in Biden's Department of Justice, that's for sure. What a mess this has all turned out to be. Up after the break, Berquam back from El Salvador. He'll join me with what he discovered on his latest adventure into the broken border. It's coming up next on ABL. Well, everyone already knows that we have the very best team of reporters covering the southern border here at Real America's Voice, bar none. I'd put them up against anyone. Well, we're lucky enough to have Ben Bergquam joining me today with a report on what he witnessed on a fact-finding mission in El Salvador recently. Here's a bit of a tease of what you will see this weekend in the newest episode of Law and Border.
Going after 15 wanted suspects, members of the MS-13 gang. This is an ongoing operation down here in El Salvador. They already have 60,000 of these criminal thugs in prison. They would beat people with bits and bats, terrorize the community. MS-13 infiltrated the entire country. One of the guards was decapitated. The inmates played soccer with his head. You're not seeing this anywhere else, I'll tell you that much.
Remarkable stuff. Join me now, Ben Bergquam himself. Ben, you have done tremendous work, like I said at the beginning. You also have great people making it possible, a great sponsor for these trips lately, including the one to Europe, the one to El Salvador, and elsewhere. Tell me about what that takes and who's behind it.
Yeah, it's like you said, there's no other network that really does what Real America's Voice does. We just got done with our trip to Europe. This episode in El Salvador. We're actually heading back to Panama on Sunday. I'll be joining Oscar Blue, and then we just had that month-long coverage with Anthony on the border, showing you the invasion. And the bottom line is it's not getting any better. It's getting worse. They're lying from Washington, D.C. Secretary Mayorkas is lying. They know exactly what they're doing. The Darien Gap is being overrun again. And so we're heading back down there. We've actually been invited by the government of Panama to come down and show what Joe Biden's policies are actually doing, because they're so fed up with it. So we're heading down there, and it's because of sponsors like Patriot Mobile. These guys, it's time that everybody support companies that support the values that you believe in, whether that's Real America's Voice News or Patriot Mobile. And we've got a great sponsorship with them right now. If you join, they get free activation with promo code RAV. So I can't say enough about them, but we're going to keep doing it. We're going to keep doing what the mainstream media refuses to do until we take this country back and until we secure the border and put American citizens first again.
Yeah, we're going to do something called Telling the Truth, Ben. That's what we're going to do here. Here's a perspective for people that I want them to consider, and I want you to weigh in on. By the time Joe Biden is done with his first term, only term as president, it's estimated that 10 million people will come into this country illegally. 10 million by the time he exits the Oval Office in January 2025. That's more than 40 states, Ben. Only 10 states in America have more than 10 million citizens. And I want people to consider that. There's a very good chance that whatever state you're sitting in has less than 10 million people. And that is a jaw-dropping, remarkable situation. You listen to the mayor of New York, Eric Adams. He's saying, we can't take anymore. It's got to stop. The state of Massachusetts declaring a state of emergency and calling in the National Guard. It's the blue states and the blue cities going, wait a second. This is not what we bargained for, even though maybe it is. But 10 million people, Ben. Think about that. Tell us about that.
Yeah, and that's what we know of. The number that really should frighten the American people is the unknown. So those are the numbers that they're admitting to, but it's the gotaways, the runners, the ones that don't want to get caught, the terror suspects, that are multi-millions more by the time Joe Biden's out of office. It's treason. I mean, it truly is the definition of treason. They're putting into place policies that are a detriment to American citizens, to the Constitution of this country, and to the livelihood of American citizens. And they know they're doing it. They know these policies don't work. They know President Trump's policies did work, and they're doing the exact opposite. And it is ironic that you have these blue states who are the ones that enacted sanctuary policies, blue cities like New York City, who has sanctuary policies protecting illegal aliens, who are now saying, wait a second, we didn't sign up for this. But as you said, that's exactly what they signed up for. They've invited this into our country, but it's every single American that's going to ultimately end up paying for it.
Well, and I want to focus on something, though, Ben. You say the policies of the Biden administration are not working, or are they? If this is the policy they want, if they want to flood the nation, the policy is working quite well, right?
Yeah. Yeah, and that really comes down to the question why. Why would you be doing this? And the only answer that I can think of, and the only one that really makes sense, is because it's intentional. They want to undermine this country. There are people in this country who are in government within this country that don't like the foundation of this nation. They don't like freedom. They don't like liberty. There are people that believe in Marxism, communism, and want to replace that into our society. And the only way you can do that is through chaos. And this is part of that chaos operation. A lot of people believe that. I think it's the theory that makes the most sense, because anything else really doesn't make sense. So you're right. No, it's not that their policies aren't working. They are working, and they're screwing up America in the process.
Well, and the last place I want to stop here, and I want to focus back on Massachusetts, New York City. Pick your city. Pick your blue sanctuary state or sanctuary city that's being overrun, and they don't have the services to handle these people. And American school kids are being pushed out of the playground so they can set up camps for migrants, and pushed out of the schools so migrants can live there and so forth. Or we're just kicking people out of hotels like veterans and making them homeless so illegals can live there. I think this has a political price tag on it. And now that the blue states and the blue cities and Mayor Eric Adams and others are saying, wait a second, and the governor of Massachusetts is declaring an emergency in Massachusetts, I think there's a political price to pay, and I think it gets higher every day that they pull this stunt, as my mother would call it. What do you think? What are you hearing out there?
Yeah, it should. The concern that I have, and I think millions of Americans have, is what's Kevin McCarthy doing about it? What are the leaders of the Republican Party doing about it? President Trump's really the only one hammering it, and until you get other people, and we're doing it, Real America's Voice and a couple other networks are doing it, but until you get leadership in the Republican Party actually pinning it on these guys and waking the American people up to where the problem is actually coming from, it's the same game. They create the problem, and then they blame the Republicans, and then they pretend they have the solution to it, and they get away with it until we actually hold them accountable. That's my concern, and that's why we have to raise the alarm loud enough to wake the American citizens up to hold them accountable.
Yeah, they blame the Republicans, and then their media lapdog friends use a megaphone to blow it up and say, "Oh yeah, it's the Republicans," when we all know certainly well that's not the case. Ben, thank you as always. Law and Border is this weekend. Catch that brand new episode featuring El Salvador. It's remarkable stuff. Ben, thank you.
Thank you, sir.
All right, up after the break, Biden's EPA is getting ready to potentially ruin America's food supply. No, it's true. Joe Reek will be here to discuss and explain coming up next on AVL. I'll be right back. I need you to pay attention to this story because this is one of the most bizarre things that I've heard and out of this administration, and that's saying something. President Joe Biden's administration finalized plans, got to hear my hands, for a program it argues will further reduce air pollution from heavy-duty engines and vehicles across the U.S. But truckers argue the proposed standards will cripple the supply chain and possibly the American food supply right along with it. You see, the new emission standards put forth by the Environmental Protection Agency, never voted on by Congress. Think about that. They're significantly more stringent, and they cover a wider range of heavy-duty engines and their operating conditions compared to previous standards. And they're aimed at reducing emissions of nitrogen oxides and other pollutants. The rule officially went into effect in March, but will be implemented for new trucks, semi-tractor-trailer rigs, sold after 2027. Couple that with recent disasters that our nation has faced, it might be a wake-up call to start getting prepared for food emergencies, because those new 18-wheelers, first of all, the lithium batteries weigh 8,000 pounds, and the upcharge per truck is about $300,000. I'm sure they've all got the money just to buy new trucks at almost $500,000 a piece if they're EVs. Here with me to talk about it, Joe Reek from My Patriot Supply. Joe, I'm sure you can go from a $180,000 semi to a $480,000 semi, because that's what they're talking about. And that's just for the cab, of course. I mean, can you imagine this idiocy? It's nuts.
Yeah, I just don't know where these truckers are going to get the money to reinvest in their equipment to pay that. They're not going to do it. And what that's going to do for us is we are going to be foot with the bill. You know, the truckers and the men and women behind the wheels of those semi-trucks that are delivering foods all across this nation, those guys are the workhorses of our American society. And if those truckers get stopped from doing their job, that's going to have a tremendous effect on everybody here that relies on those trucks for moving those goods and services. Most of the grocery stores practice what's called JIT, or just-in-time inventory. I mean, it's pretty impressive on how they can calculate how many boxes of cereal they're going to sell in a certain week. And they time it perfectly with receiving those shipments from these trucking companies. And if there's ever a disruption in the ability to move freight and goods across this country with those 18-wheelers and those heavy-duty trucks, we're going to be feeling it at our local grocery stores, at every single store that we shop at. It's going to be a tremendous effect. But here's the thing, Steve, and this is what I've said repeatedly, is if you want to control the people, you have to control the food supply. A majority of our food that we have into our grocery stores, they don't just show up there. They're brought there by those semi-trucks. And when you have these companies that are going to be imposed with changing the way that they do business, or making them invest hundreds of thousands of dollars for each new vehicle to comply by these mandates, we're going to have a major shortage of truckers, and major shortage of the ability to move product from one state to the other.
I'll just tell you how bad it is. Joe will do a little bit more math here for the folks paying attention at home. The range of these new EV trucks, like I said, some of them cost almost $500,000, $500,000. The range is about 300 miles. The range of a current semi-rig is about 1,600, sometimes a bit more, on 300 gallons of diesel fuel. So if you want to make a run from, say, the Midwestern farm fields to California and then pick up vegetables and run back to the Midwest to sell those vegetables and go back and forth as we do, 300 miles? You're barely going to get out of Michigan. You'll be stuck in the middle of Illinois charging up, and then stuck in Iowa charging up, and then stuck in Nebraska charging up. It doesn't work. We've got to protect ourselves, Joe. We've got to.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think what these things, what these policies coming out, what this is doing is this is forcing Americans to lean into self-reliance, to lean into the idea that nobody's going to come bail you out if you were ever in a situation that you need help in. And it's up to us, it's up to you to get prepared. And whether that be having a couple of extra days of food in your home, or having emergency gear for when the power goes out, you got to be responsible enough to take the initiative to become self-sufficient. You know, we're seeing this major change that we're being forced to become self-sufficient because of these policies. And unfortunately, Steve, time is going to run out where we're not going to have the ability to go down to the grocery stores and get the things that we get out on a weekly or even a daily basis. We got to get prepared. And this is what we try to do, is educating people that, hey, you got to look around. You got to pay attention to what's going on. Do your own research, but do your work and do your homework, and take the steps that you need to take in order to become self-sufficient. self-sufficient. There's no greater feeling of knowing that you have the peace of mind of knowing that regardless of what life throws at you, that you can still take care and provide food and shelter and protection for you and your family. You just got to do it.
Listen,
here at My Patriot Supply, that's what we do.
Yeah, preparewithrav.com is one of the places you can go right now. My Patriot Supply food is good for 25 years, so it's there in case of emergency. It doesn't matter if it happens today or 10 years from now, although I think it'll happen before then. My gut tells me that, Joe. But the point is, get ready. Don't stand there flat-footed going, man, I should have listened to Gruber. I should have listened to Joe. Right?
Here's the thing, too. Yeah, no, absolutely. I think one of the biggest hurdles, Steve, is people don't know where or how to get started. And if you have those feelings of, gosh, I just don't know what to do, give us a call here at My Patriot Supply. We have preparedness specialists that can talk with you and can understand what needs and what requirements are for you and your individual families. And we have plans and we have products and items available that fits those needs. You know, for example, my youngest son, he is type 1 diabetic and he's also celiac. So I have to do something completely different for my son than I do with my other kids. And we have options and we have plans for everybody. Whether you have health requirements or anything, you can find it here at My Patriot Supply. But if you don't know where to get started, go to preparewithrav.com. Look at the specials that we have with the Real America Voices Network. We love this partnership. We love educating people on what to do to get prepared. But if you need additional help, give us a call. We can walk through these different plans and look through the different needs that you need for you and your family, and we can get you that peace of mind and we can get you prepared so that way you don't have to worry about this. But get it done, and you got to get it done soon.
Preparewithrav.com. Joe Reek, thank you for being here. I got to run, but trust me, I'm prepared thanks to you. Preparewithrav.com. My friends, you should do it as well. Joe, thank you. After the break, we'll have a story that reminds you of what makes America wonderful, plus your answers to the America's Voice question of the day. How much do you think the economy will play a part in our next election? It's all up next. All right, what makes America wonderful? A good joke here or there on occasion does, but here's something else. On this day of September 7th in 1813, the United States officially got that nickname, Uncle Sam. The name is linked to Samuel Wilson, a meat packer from Troy, New York, who supplied barrels of beef to the United States Army during the Second Revolution, better known as the War of 1812. Wilson stamped the barrel with U.S. for United States, but soldiers began referring to the grub as Uncle Sam, you see. The local newspaper picked up on the story, and Uncle Sam eventually gained widespread acceptance as the nickname for and personification of the United States federal government. In the late 1860s and 1870s, a political cartoonist began popularizing the image of Uncle Sam, eventually giving Sam the white beard and stars and stripes suit that are associated with the character today. Perhaps the most famous image of Uncle Sam was created by artist James Montgomery Flagg. You see, in Flagg's version, Uncle Sam wears a tall top hat and blue jacket and is pointing straight ahead at the viewer during World War I. This portrait of Sam with the words, "I want you," for the U.S. Army was used as a recruiting poster. You've all seen it. And now you know how Uncle Sam was born. Pretty cool, right? All right, here's your question of the day. How much do you think the economy will play a part in our next election? Well, Patricia Edwards writes, depends. Has their stock gone up? Can the mainstream media continue to gaslight and lie and propagandize about the reason the economy is horrible? Will they continue to support the DNC election interference? Of course they will. Can make a difference locally? I hope so. All elections are local. Grassroots patriots need to get involved. That part is 100% true. Nice response, Patricia Edwards. Bradford Randall writes, they've already have Michelle Obama declared the winner. Oh, come on, Bradford. Can't be doing that early in the day. Jeffrey Malkin writes, it should play a huge part and hopefully sway a lot of the Democrats to change their way of thinking and vote Republican. That's what we truly need. And Tim Boyd, a lot, hopefully. Thank you, Tim. Don't forget to drop me a line and tell me what's going on in your neck of the woods, what you think about this program and everything else. SteveGruber.com, the place to do that and connect and tell me what's good. What should we do here on RAV, on America's Voice Live? And don't forget to join me to start your day tomorrow. The Steve Gruber Show kicks off live programming every day, Monday through Friday at 6 a.m. and then back here for AVL.
Here are some of the headlines we are featuring today from your favorite news outlets at offthepress.com. It was just a couple of months ago that first son Hunter Biden was in a deal to get off on some pretty serious gun and money charges. But all that appears over now that federal officials have signaled they will indict him within the month. Former President Donald Trump faces some big felony charges also, but he's not going into hiding. In fact, the Republican 2024 frontrunner is telling prosecutors to bring it on so he can refute them in court. Mexico is about to get something that even the United States has never had, its first woman president. Both major parties have just picked female candidates. And have you ever noticed that football's glamorous players like to choose low uniform numbers? Now we know why. They think it makes them look thinner. And a UCLA study just confirmed that theory. For stories like these and more updates all day long from your favorite news outlets, go to offthepress.com.
Good afternoon, beautiful people. I'm Miranda Kahn. My co-pilot, Dr. Gina, and I are here to safely guide you through the news of the day.
You can tell someone's been having some car adventures. That would be Miranda.
Yes.
First up, CNN is in panic mode. They are sounding the alarm right now that Trump could wipe Biden out in the 2024 election. Their new poll has Trump beating Biden, and that has them very concerned. Watch.
The margin of error, no clear leader. Donald Trump 47%, Joe Biden 46%. They're basically in a statistical tie. But what I will note was there was not a single poll conducted by